everybody, to another episode of the Nonprofit Show. We're really excited that you're here today with us. We have two experts from JMT Consulting talking to us about HR, making dollars and cents. And wow, we need to hear this message now more than ever. We're going to be talking about recruiting and retention with Kristen Stine. She's the HR director at JMT Consulting. And we welcome back Dr. Stephanie Rose-Belcher. She's the chief operating officer at JMT Consulting as well. Welcome back, ladies. Or I should say, welcome back, Stephanie. Welcome, Kristen.
Excited to
Thanks, Julia.
It's going to be a lot of fun. You know, we talk so much about talent when we're off camera. Stephanie, you and I talking about, you know, the sector as a whole, where we're going. And so this is going to be a great conversation, maybe with a different lens that we don't always get to see through. So I'm really excited to start this conversation. We have amazing conversations each and every day on the Nonprofit Show because we have amazing sponsors. And they include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, our friends over at JMT Consulting, Interim Executives Academy, Your Part-Time Controller, Fundraisers Friday, and Holdings for Good. We're super excited about Holdings for Good because they are a bank just for nonprofits. So really, really cool to welcome them to our group. I'm Julia C. Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy, but more importantly, Dr. Stephanie Rose-Belcher. She's the COO of JMT Consulting, and Kristen Stine, as I mentioned, she's the HR director over at JMT Consulting. Ladies, before we get this conversation kicked off, and it's going to be a barn burner, tell us what JMT Consulting does. Dr. Rose-Belcher, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. JMT Consulting is a 35-year-old female-founded, female-owned, female-run consulting firm that focuses very specifically on the financial function of the nonprofit. We only work with nonprofits, and we're bringing technology, services, and expertise to the nonprofit to help that entire back office, ERP system, budget planning, and other connected systems work as efficiently and effectively as possible for that nonprofit. You know, we believe that we enable the entire finance department, back office group to enable them to be the best at what they do so that they can truly support the financial aspects of the nonprofit's mission.
It's really an interesting thing because over the trajectory of your company that is very unique because it's all women led in that respect of a fintech company, the changes you have seen in technology must just be stunning.
Yeah, I think, our founder, who's been certainly on the show before, Jackie Tiso, she will tell you that she started literally with pencil and paper and doing the old accounting, the debits and the credits,
Wow.
working through the books. And that's really how she started the company. She would go and do the books and the plans for nonprofits, and where she was pretty visionary in seeing how technology was supporting and enabling the entire financial accounting function, and what was going to happen. She really saw how the world was going to change from paper and pencil through to software that you had on a floppy disk, all the way to post Y2K and moving into cloud accounting, right? And now we're sitting and working on things like, how does AI help you do your job so that the rote tasks go away and you get to spend your time really doing analysis and planning, which, as opposed to, I've got to type in, all my bank reconciliations. So it's just this amazing evolution. And what I see, more than ever is the need for the financial leaders. This is probably universal, but particularly for nonprofits and the CFOs at the nonprofit, their role is so crucial in helping the organization understand what they can do, how they can most effectively carry out their mission. Their job isn't just to crunch numbers and turn in an audit report, right? It's so much broader, and technology lets them effectively do that job and be much more of a leader and a strategist than ever before.
So, Kristen, let's talk about that because it's such an interesting time. We're talking about that, but we also have the reality of labor. And I think there's no secret that there's somewhat of a shortage of talent when it comes to the financial sector. And then, you're trying to roll people that are highly educated and skilled into the nonprofit sector. Can you kind of frame up what the costs are of bringing somebody new in versus the retention aspect, and why maybe we should start there with the conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously there's non-monetary impacts to losing key staff members. There's work loss. It can be lower morale from already overburdened team members. But according to the Deloitte survey, we're looking at a monetary impact of anywhere between 50 and 200% of the annual salary of a person to recruit them, onboard them, and get them up to speed. So yeah, it really kind of drives home how we can take those resources and roll them into a retention budget and really invest in the staff that we have and keep our program delivery running smoothly and everyone happy and efficient.
Okay, that's what I would call a hair on fire moment for me. I'm shocked at the severity of that number.
Right. And it obviously goes up higher with our key staff members. But if I was going to be making a case to my board to invest in retention strategies, I'd be going back and looking at our turnover from last year, pulling those salaries and saying, this is the amount of money that we could have saved if we invested even half of this into retention programs.
I love going back, looking where you were, so you can figure out where you're going. I got to ask this question. Do you think that many nonprofits even think this way or do this?
I think it's starting to change. Again, as we get better, like Stephanie was saying, technology and better access to data, and our HR teams are able to provide that information to our board members, I think that a lot more people are starting to look this way. And I think that, again, with the right information, we can really empower our HR departments to run really efficient organizations.
So with that framework in mind, let's talk about the cost of onboarding. We were talking in the green room. This seems to be such a problem from the board all the way down to all of our different staff level. Let's talk about this in terms of the actual cost. And I would love to know about the amount of time that this also takes. Kristen, let me have you start and explain what you see.
Absolutely. So, like I said, that 200% number can factor into this onboarding and the time it takes to get someone up to speed. Industry standard is saying it takes 6 months to get somebody fully efficient in their role. And that is a huge gap. Again, we're losing organizational knowledge. There's that inefficiency as people kind of navigate new systems and figure out where things are, and things are just not running as efficiently. Now, a well-organized nonprofit who has invested some of that retention dollars into a good system can obviously speed that up and get someone to efficiency a lot faster. But if I was an HR director at a nonprofit and talking to my board, that is one of the places I would look at investing my money.
Stephanie, do you see that there is this 6-month gap in trying, especially when we're talking about the folks from the financial side? It seems to me like if you know accounting and you know finance, you're going to be able to slot in a lot more quickly. Or should we still think about that talent is needing the 6 months?
So I think obviously it's a continuum, and yes, an experienced finance accounting resource should be able to adopt and adapt quicker. But honestly, to get to mastery and really knowing the organization and its nuances, I really do think it takes a hard 4 months for an experienced person. If they're not experienced, for sure, it's 6 months, if not more. So, what Kristen was sort of alluding to, and from an investment perspective, is investing in the tools, the techniques, and I'll use the word time here, to effectively and efficiently onboard somebody. That means you've got the tools, you've made it easy for them to do their job. It's not, your procedures are sitting in a binder back at the office and I work remotely. It's access to the information. It's access to the mentors and the buddies and the resources to help guide that person. I might be stealing some of your thunder there, Kristen, but it's some of the it's how are you doing the feedback as a manager with that individual? And if you say go get them and never talk to them again, you've probably failed. In getting that person to be onboarded efficiently. It's how do you teach them about your organization and your mission and your culture and your vision, right? That's part of it, and reinforcing those things. So that's all. Again, it goes back to sort of the tools, your people processes, and the time that you commit as an organization to that individual. Those things are directly going to impact that 6-month number. They have to. That training, again, giving them the things they need to empower them to do their job.
And jumping off what Stephanie says, and I don't want to discount, I know that a lot of nonprofits are working with small staffs who are already overwhelmed, and taking the time to step back and set up these systems and set up these processes and get really organized can be really tough for small teams. And I empathize with that. So it's I think sometimes seeing the impact on the budget and seeing how we can actually deliver programs so much more effectively and efficiently can really make the case for taking a step back and being able to kind of get these things set up.
Right. Well, I think that it seems like when we're thinking about the financial repercussions, that's one thing, but we don't often measure the cultural and efficiency aspect of this. And I was thinking, man, as you're speaking, we treat different groups within our nonprofit sector, within our nonprofit staff. We probably imbue them with more of this information, and the cultural side and the culture of philanthropy and the sharing the mission, vision, and values. And I hate to say it, but I can see us saying, oh yeah, those people in finance, they don't really need to know that. They just need they need to know the software or whatever, right? And that's shocking. That's a horrible attitude to have, but I gotta believe when we're specifically speaking about the silos within our organizations, there's probably some truth to that. What do you ladies think?
I think for sure there is a bit of maybe complacency is, I don't know if that's the word I really want to use, but with administrative staff, right? They just got to do this function so we can run the business, so to speak. And so I don't know that the same level of passion and commitment and culture is always imbued in people with these highly technical functions. Forget finance. What if you've got a tech person, is a tech person that's taking care of your computers getting that same, mission, vision, values? There's probably a good chance they're not. And I think it is worth recognizing that regardless of the role, that onboarding process has to have those things. When we talk about the finance side, we're already dealing with, as you pointed out, a lack of resources. Our schools are not pushing out as many accountants as we need and financial professionals as we need as an industry. We probably have, a boomer Gen X drop off of people as well. So we've definitely got a resource gap and a competition for those resources. So how do we, the nonprofit, think about, to Kristen's point, what do we invest from a retention perspective? Because boy, the cost of losing and replacing somebody is astronomical. And it has a wide ranging impact. It could impact our inbound revenue. It could impact, deadlines. It could impact, program delivery. So it becomes critically important to think about both the strategies to retain people and the strategies to quickly and effectively onboard people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's such an interesting dilemma because we have 1.8 million registered nonprofits in this US. We have a tremendous shift in labor. Stephanie, you mentioned this because we have an aging population, a retiring population, and then we have a population coming in that hasn't necessarily all gone to business school or earn their SCPA. And so it's an interesting time to be talking about this, and then also looking at what the profile of our potential candidates are. Kristen, I've got to ask you this dicey question, and for a lot of companies this is something that can get you fired. How do we talk about compensation and being competitive in our salaries? There's a great ad right now on TV for a recruiting company where the candidate, professional looking gentleman, is talking to the HR lady and says, well, what's the salary? And she's like, oh, it's competitive. Is it competitive is the word I think she uses. And he can't get her to say the number.
Yeah.
Talk to us about this.
Absolutely. First thing that I want to make clear is that more and more states are actually requiring pay transparency on job ads. So if you're posting jobs right now, I'd make sure that that's not a requirement for your state if you're not compliant already. And if you're in one of those states, then now's a great time to go ahead and put that information out there. Now, this does a lot of really good things, I think. Number one is that you're not wasting time, because the worst thing that you can do is go through like 7 rounds of interviews and then have someone decline on salary at the end when it's nowhere near what they're looking for. So getting this out front and having this conversation early can really streamline your process. The other thing that it does is that, kind of talking about how competitive are we in the marketplace. And I understand that nonprofits are kind of budget constrained in a lot of times, but all your competitors are going to have to, and competitors for talent, I mean, are going to have to share their salary ranges too. And so one of the great ways is to look in your area and go look at jobs that are similar to yours. And so check out Indeed and Idealist and all of those places and see what is out in the market today that are literally your competition for the roles that you're hiring for.
Stephanie, talk about a time warp. Think about the over the decades, how we had different rates based on gender. We have different compensation rates based on where you live and work. I'm thinking about how different it is now with the remote workforce, and what that looks like in relationship to these salaries. What are you seeing?
So it's really interesting. Kristen and I talk about this a bit because, she and I get the joy of sort of looking at candidates for our own organization on a regular basis. And, the beauty of remote work is if you're in an expensive geography, you don't have to hire from that expensive geography. Mm-hmm. And so, you've got some options that can help you get a really qualified person that's maybe, in a state locale that isn't commanding, Manhattan price tags. And we certainly look at that. And we have the flexibility of doing that because, we can do most of our work remotely. That being said, if you are kind of bound by geography and have to have people on site, on location, you have to balance, market competitiveness with obviously the budget that you can afford, but you can come up with alternative ways to make the role attractive. And we know the research is telling us that flexibility, work-life balance, can be incentivizing and, maybe can be a counter to a higher salary.
So let's talk about that then even more, because we need to be thinking about this, and you both have some low cost ideas that will help attract talent, but more importantly keep staff, because we can't always just jack up that salary. So what do some of these low cost benefits look like that maybe we haven't as nonprofits even explored? um, Go ahead, Kristen.
Yeah, well, I was going to jump off of what Stephanie was saying, and we've already talked about how the boomers are retiring. And what that leaves is the current generation who is in the workforce is dealing with a lot of pressures on both ends. So they might be caring for elderly parents while also caring for kids. And so flexible work arrangements can mean the world to them, and even mean a lot more than a higher salary would. So investigating flexible work arrangements, maybe that's for 10-hour days, maybe it's summer hours. I see a lot of nonprofits do that, having the option for sabbaticals. So really investing in that paid time off and flexibility can be a great way to retain people, especially with the new pressures that this generation in particular seem to be facing.
Interesting.
And just to piggyback on the retiree comment, and then there's quite a few other things, but the other thing to contemplate is part-time workforces, right? And retirees who are maybe not so thrilled with not working,
Right.
that would like back to that sort of flexible arrangement. Like, there's back to what we talked about at the beginning of this conversation, experienced workers, they're able to ramp faster. They're able to get going quicker. They've got, that world experience that's going to make a difference, right? So, boy, as a part-time worker who's got experience, equal to, if not better than a full-time person, brand new with no experience, who wants a gazillion dollars in salary and even more benefits. So I do think there's, having flexible approaches to the staffing in general can help you get what you need without, again, breaking the bank. And I love what Kristen talked about, because, we see it time and time again: flexibility, work-life balance, ways for people to manage all of the life that they have, is huge and can be a real incentivizer, particularly when salary maybe isn't as competitive as everybody else.
I love
Kristen,
that.
we have a lot of other ideas too, don't we?
Yeah, let's hear them.
Yeah. Also, we often hear that people don't quit roles, they quit managers. And so investing heavily in your leadership development training and personal development, I think, can really go a long way too, because having a workplace that you enjoy is something that really leads people to stay.
I love that. When you talk about that, it brings up another question that I have, and this might seem like a super off the wall question, but Stephanie brought up this really interesting aspect of using a part-time fractional type of older leader, older staff member. How do you mitigate what that labor source is going to, or labor type is going to want, with maybe a younger member who's going to want something else? And so I'm thinking about, like, a younger staff member might really like that professional development and be really into that. Whereas that maybe that older worker isn't as attracted to that as they are to maybe more flexible time. I mean, how do we make this the same but yet different to whoever that person is? Because we're now working with 4 generations in the workplace, which is so crazy. So, Kristen, how do we kind of balance all that?
Yeah, well, I think that one of the things I love is as HR is sort of evolving is that it doesn't have to be cookie cutter, right?
Okay.
And do the same thing for everybody. That we do have some flexibility to find the right fit for the role, for the where we are as an organization and what we need. Are we kind of filling a gap while we train someone who's out of school who will eventually take over that role, and they just need a little bit of mentorship and some kind of support during that time? Or are we, an organization that really does want to just straight outsource this, and it's not something that we ever want to take on because we're going to let the experts do it and we're going to focus on our mission, which also makes total sense. And so I do think that just taking into consideration the age of the organization, what the needs are, your long-term succession planning, and then the resources. Are you close to a college where you can develop a really strong internship program? Like, what are the things that impact your organization? Because everybody's different and there's no one size fits all.
I love that you gave us permission to think that way.
Yeah.
That hasn't normally been the way that we did things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that we can evolve to not a one size fits all, and it does really boil down to leaning on your HR leader, right? But we have to have some consistency. We have to have fairness. We have to have equity in terms of, I'm a dollars person. So if the monetary value of everything is $5,000, and you want to spend the $5,000 differently based on individual unique needs or stages of life, cool. But you're spending $5,000, so you're not worried about any kind of fairness issues or inconsistencies. And what you do for part-time workers can certainly vary from what you do with full-time workers. So I just think it's the creating that comprehensive view, a thoughtful approach. Kristen, what's the org that you mentioned that helps you come up with creative solutions that you told me about?
Yeah, there's some great companies out there. Benny is one that is out there, and I can send this link, but that can help organizations develop really comprehensive benefits platform that is totally hands-off for your HR team, which is always a win, but can have things like pet insurance and maybe elder care or other things that let people pick and choose with a dollar amount that the organization selects, whatever benefits mean the most to them.
Love it. I think that's fascinating. Well, this is a huge conversation that we could be going forth with. And I think that we need to have you back and to explore it even more, because again, the labor market is shifting so dramatically, and we're all trying to figure out new ways to work with different people. Before I let you go, I want to make sure that we have an opportunity to talk about Innovate 2026. I have raved on air about the Innovate conference that JMT Consulting has. I first met so many of your team when I spoke at Innovate 2024 in Boston last year. Innovate 2025 was in Nashville. This coming May 4 through 6, Innovate 2026 is going to be going to Washington. Talk to us about that, Stephanie.
Yeah, we picked Washington, and the beauty of event planning is you're doing this stuff 2 years ahead of time. Mm-hmm. But we really are, because that's just how all that works. But we felt beyond just the backdrop of Washington and history. It's where policy's made. It's where decisions happen. It's where so many leaders in the nonprofit sector are. We felt it was appropriate to bring Innovate to Washington, D.C., and we're working real hard on our speaker slate right now, and getting folks in that can talk to us, not just about technology, which is what we always do at Innovate. We're always teaching. How do you use your stuff? How do you get more efficient? How can you be the best finance team you can be? But we also really think it's important to bring broader topics to our financial leaders. Like, we're going to do Don't quote me on the title, but I'm calling it AI for Dummies. But it's not AI for your accounting system, but just for you and me. Like, how should we be using AI every day? Because it can help make us as human beings, as just general workers, so much faster and more efficient. So like, that's so topical and needed, because what do we know? If you don't have time and you're busy, you're not going and getting into the weeds of how to do AI. But so we're really focused on making sure we bring depth of conversations to our customers, with that backdrop of Washington.
I love it. I got to say, it is a fabulous convening of all different people. Before we came on air this morning, I had somebody reach out to me from the Northeast who I had met at Innovate 2025 to ask a question about board structure. So, I mean, it has a lot of amazing knowledge, and it's not just for the fintech finance side of our sector. So congratulations on getting that going. And when you think about it, Stephanie, the IRS is the one that gives us our status, whether or not we can perform and operate as a nonprofit, and that's Washington, D.C. So I think this is going to be a really good choice. I really, really do. We have so enjoyed talking with both of you today. Dr. Stephanie Rose-Belcher, she's the COO of JMT Consulting, along with Kristen Stine, HR Director, also at JMT Consulting. We have amazing partners with us. JMT is one of those partners, but we also have Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, Interim Executives Academy, Your Part-Time Controller, Fundraisers Friday, and Holdings for Good. Wow, ladies, thank you for kind of circling back with something that we're all been concerned about with this labor change, and really giving us some ideas on how we can navigate more fully. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Thanks, Julia.
It's been a lot of fun. Hey, as we end each and every episode of the Nonprofit Show, we leave with this message, and that is to stay well so you can do well. Thanks, and we'll see you.